Somebody once said, if you took all the money in the world, divided it up equally among everybody, it would soon all be back in the same pockets. Why? Because wealth doesn't stay with those who only wish for it. It stays with those prepared for it. That's why the rules of money are more important than money itself. Money flows to philosophy. It flows to discipline, to understanding, to the person who has learned the rules of stewardship. Without the mindset to guide it, money gets wasted, traded for toys, or lost in poor decisions. I've met many people who earn a fortune in income but remain broke when it comes to wealth. That might sound strange, but here's the truth. High income does not equal wealth. Wealth is not measured by how much flows in. It's measured by how much stays, grows, and works for you. Income is what you earn today. Wealth is what you're building for tomorrow. Some people earn $10,000 a month and spend $12,000. Others earn $3,000 a month and save, invest, and multiply it until one day they have more security, more options, and more freedom than the high earner who never learned discipline. When I was young, I thought the solution to every financial problem was more income. If I could just earn more, everything would be fine. But I discovered that you can out-earn your discipline. I've seen professionals with six-figure salaries living paycheck to paycheck because every time their income increased, so did their spending. The house got bigger, the car got shinier, the wardrobe got fancier, and the bank account stayed empty. That's when I realized it isn't the size of the paycheck that determines your future. It's the philosophy behind what you do with it. The real strategy is to focus not just on earning, but on growing your net worth. What are you building? What assets are you accumulating? How much capital is working for you while you sleep? If you want to measure your true financial health, don't look at the paycheck. Look at the statement of what you own versus what you owe. That's where the real picture emerges. Here's a simple step to start. Create a net worth tracker. Write down everything you own that has value. Cash, investments, property, and subtract everything you owe. Debts, loans, liabilities. That number may be small at first, but what matters is watching it grow month by month, year by year. That is wealth in progress. So never confuse income with wealth. Income feeds you today, but wealth frees you tomorrow. One of the greatest disciplines you can ever learn is the art of living on less than you earn. It sounds simple, but it's rare. Most people let their expenses rise right alongside their income, and before long, every raise disappears into a bigger house, a newer car, or shinier toys. But wealth is not built by spending everything that comes in. Wealth is built by creating balance, by setting limits on lifestyle and redirecting the surplus into things that grow. That's why I've always taught the principle of living on 70% of your income. Here's how it works. 70% is plenty for living well. You can pay the bills, enjoy good food, even take vacations. But the other 30%, that's where the magic island. 10% should go into investing. That's the seed of wealth, the capital that grows over time and begins to work for you even while you sleep. Another 10% should go into your own development, books, courses, seminars, anything that makes you more valuable to the marketplace. Because the more valuable you become, the more income you can attract. And the final 10%, that should go into giving, support a cause, help someone in need, contribute to something bigger than yourself. That act not only benefits others, but it keeps your own heart and philosophy in the right place. Now, here's what I discovered. If you make this division automatic, you won't even feel the sacrifice. Set up separate accounts and transfer the money on payday before you ever see it sitting in your checking account, tempting you to spend. You'll be amazed how quickly your investments grow, how much progress you make in personal growth, and how much joy you find in giving. When I first learned this principle, I realized it wasn't about restriction, it was about freedom. Living on 70% doesn't shrink your life, it expands your future. It ensures you're not just making a living, but building a fortune. shaping your character, and leaving a legacy. So discipline yourself to live on 70%. Let the other 30 change your life. One of the earliest lessons I had to learn about money was that discipline with the small amounts creates capacity for the larger amounts. If you can't set aside a dime out of $1, you won't set aside 1,000 out of 10,000. It isn't about the size of the money, it's about the size of the habit. Wealth doesn't come to those who wait for a big windfall to finally start saving. Wealth comes to those who build the muscle of saving while the amounts are small, so that when the amounts are larger, the habit is already automatic. The principle is simple: always pay yourself first. Most people do the opposite. They pay the landlord, the grocery store, the credit card company, the government, and then, if there's anything left, they consider saving. But by then it's usually gone. That approach guarantees a lifetime of financial struggle. The wealthy flip the order. Before anything else, they set aside a portion for themselves, for their future. Even if it's only 10% of your income, you make that non-negotiable. You don't wait until you're making more, because the discipline doesn't magically arrive with a higher paycheck. It starts with pennies. I remember when my mentor challenged me to start with $1. He said, "Don't wait until you can save big. Prove to yourself you can save small." And that one simple exercise changed everything. It wasn't the amount, it was the principle. It taught me control. It taught me discipline. It taught me that money is best managed by philosophy, not emotion. Here's a practical way to begin. The very next paycheck you get, take the first 10% and move it into a separate account automatically. Don't think about it. Don't debate it. Just do it. When it's automatic, you remove the temptation to spend it, and before long you'll be shocked at how those small amounts compound into something substantial. Saving before you spend is not a restriction. It's a declaration. It says, "I value my future enough to claim it first." And that single shift in priority is the seed of every fortune. Money is one of the best servants you'll ever have, but it makes one of the worst masters. If you don't direct it, it will direct you. If you don't tell it where to go, it will disappear, and you'll be left wondering where it went. Too many people fall into the trap of letting money call the shots. They wake up each month reacting to bills, reacting to expenses, reacting to emergencies. That's not mastery, that's slavery. The key is to put yourself in charge, to give every dollar an assignment before it ever leaves your hand. When I first learned this lesson, I realized how careless I had been with money. Early in life, when I started earning, I thought income was the answer. But I discovered quickly that you can make a fortune and still end up broke if you don't manage it. I learned that wealth has little to do with what you earn and everything to do with what you keep, how you allocate, and how you control it. That was the shift. Money must serve me, not the other way around. The strategy is simple. Create a plan before the month begins. Write out a budget, not as a punishment, but as a declaration of control. Decide in advance what goes to living, what goes to saving, what goes to investing, what goes to giving. When you give money direction, it becomes a tool for building your vision instead of a distraction that keeps you stuck. I once sat down and tracked every dollar for 30 days, and it shocked me how much of my income was slipping away into things I couldn't even remember buying. Coffee here, gadgets there, little leaks that added up to a flood. Once I started telling my money where to go, I started to feel something I hadn't felt before. Freedom. Not because I had more, but because I was in charge. Money is designed to serve, to multiply when guided by discipline and purpose. Treat it like a servant, not a master, and you'll discover that control is the first step toward financial freedom. The greatest investment you will ever make is not in the stock market, not in real estate, not in some shiny new business idea. It's in yourself. Because here's the truth. Money will only grow as fast as you do. Your skills, your knowledge, your character, those are the multipliers of wealth. If you don't grow, your money won't either. But if you keep improving yourself, raising your value in the marketplace, money has no choice but to follow. When I was starting out, I thought the secret was finding the right investment or the right business. But my mentor stopped me and said, first, invest in yourself. Become more valuable. Learn to communicate, learn to lead, learn to sell, learn to think. At the time, I didn't fully understand, but over the years, I discovered he was right. I built fortunes and I lost fortunes, but what stayed with me, the thing that rebuilt everything when I was broke, was the skills and the mindset I had developed along the way. That was the real wealth. So, the strategy is clear. Prioritize learning skills that raise your market value. Don't just chase the next hot stock or the next quick win. Instead, ask, what can I learn today that will make me more valuable tomorrow? Skills like communication, sales, leadership, finance, technology, these are the ones that open doors, create opportunities, and expand income. And the best part? No one can take them from you. The economy can shift. The market can crash. But if you've invested in yourself, you'll always have the ability to create again. Here's a simple way to begin. Dedicate just 30 minutes each day to studying one high-income skill. Read, listen, practice. Then spend another 30 minutes applying what you've learned. Do that for 90 days, and you'll be amazed at how much sharper, more confident, and more valuable you become. The bottom line is this: assets will feed you later, but skills feed you for life. Invest in yourself first, and every other investment will multiply. One of the biggest traps people fall into is borrowing money to buy things they don't really need, just to impress people who aren't even watching. Debt used for consumption is nothing but slavery. It chains you, it steals your future, and it robs you of options. There's nothing wrong with wanting nice things, but the rule is simple. Never buy luxuries with borrowed money. Let your assets, not your debts, pay for your desires. I remember when I first started making money. I was young, eager, and like many people, I thought success was measured by how many shiny things you could own. A new car, clothes in every color, gadgets I didn't really need, I bought them all. But here's the truth. Those things didn't make me wealthy, they made me broke. I wasn't building wealth, I was building liabilities. And when my income hit a rough patch, all those luxuries turned into heavy burdens. That lesson stayed with me for life. Never use tomorrow's money to fund today's pleasure. The strategy is straightforward. Delay gratification until your investments produce enough to cover what you want. If you want a nicer car, don't borrow money to get it. Instead, build an investment that pays for the car's monthly cost. If you want a vacation, let your dividends, your side business, or your rental income cover the trip. That way, your wealth works for you, and your luxuries never threaten your freedom. Wealthy people understand this. They buy luxuries last, not first, and only when their assets can pay the bill. Because in the end, true freedom isn't found in the things you buy. It's in knowing you never have to trade tomorrow for today. If you really want to change your financial life, you must first be willing to look at it honestly. What gets measured improves, and what's ignored almost always declines. Most people never stop to truly examine where their money is going. They work hard, they earn, they spend, but at the end of the month they're left wondering, where did it all go? That's not a money problem, that's a documentation problem. If you don't have a record of your financial life, You're flying blind, and blind flying rarely ends well. I remember when my mentor asked me how much I spent on food the month before. I thought for a second and said, I don't know, but probably not much. He smiled and said, if you don't know, it's probably too much. That hit me hard. I realized that thinking I knew was not the same as knowing. So I started writing everything down, every dollar in, every dollar out. At first it seemed tedious, but within a short time it gave me clarity. And clarity brings power. I saw leaks I never noticed before. I saw patterns in my spending that revealed habits, both good and bad, and slowly I began to take control. The strategy is simple. Track income, expenses, and progress consistently. Think of it like keeping a scorecard in a game. You need to know the numbers if you want to win. When you track, you stop guessing and start knowing. And with knowledge, you can make better decisions, create new habits, and set goals you can actually measure against reality. One of the great lessons I learned early is that the marketplace doesn't pay you for your needs. It pays you for the value you bring. You can need money terribly. You can have bills piling up. You can pray and wish and hope. But the market doesn't respond to need. It only responds to value. That was a tough pill for me to swallow when I was broke and wondering why things weren't changing. But once I understood it, everything shifted. Wealth doesn't come from asking for more. It comes from becoming more. If you want to multiply your income, you must first multiply your value. I remember my first mentor saying, if you want to make more money, don't ask for a raise, go solve a bigger problem. That clicked. Instead of wishing the company would notice me, I began working on myself. I studied communication because if I could speak better, I could sell better. I studied leadership because if I could lead people, I could create bigger results. And slowly, the market responded, not to my needs, but to the value I brought. The strategy is simple, but powerful. Focus on solving bigger problems for more people. If you solve a problem for one person, you make a little. Solve that same problem for 100 people, and you've created wealth. The key is to stop asking, what can I get, and start asking, what can I give that solves something important. When you multiply value, the rewards take care of themselves. Here's a practical step you can take this month. Identify one skill or service you already have and improve it. Sharpen it, refine it, upgrade it. Maybe it's sales, maybe it's teaching, maybe it's designing, maybe it's organizing. Whatever it is, ask yourself, how can I do this better so that the people I serve get more? Just that shift can open doors you never saw before. Remember, needs don't move the needle. Value does. Multiply your value and you'll find that the rewards begin to multiply in ways you never imagined. One of the most profound distinctions I ever learned was this: wages make you a living, but profits can make you a fortune. Now, there's nothing wrong with wages. They pay the rent, they buy the groceries, they keep the lights on. Wages are honorable because they're the return for the service you render. But if you stop there, you'll always be limited. Why? Because wages are usually tied to hours, and hours are limited. You've only got so many of them in a day, in a week, in a lifetime. The secret is to use your wages to start creating profits. When I was working in my early 20s, I lived off my paycheck like everyone else. But then I met a man who opened my eyes. He said, why don't you take part of your wages and start building something that works while you're not working? That one idea changed my whole life. See, profits come from enterprise, from ownership, from creating something that can multiply without your direct labor. That's the bridge between making a living and building wealth. The strategy is simple. Let your job fund your future. Instead of spending every dollar of your paycheck on lifestyle, redirect a portion of it into something that produces profits. Maybe that's a small side business. Maybe it's an investment that grows over time. The point is to let your wages become seed money for something greater. That way, you're not just trading hours for dollars, you're planting dollars to grow more dollars. Here's a practical step. Define one simple product or service you could offer outside your job. It doesn't have to be grand, it just has to begin. Maybe you've got a skill someone will pay for on weekends. Maybe you can create a small product, or consult, or teach. The key is to take what you know, package it, and offer it. Once you've got that first client, or that first sale, you've started the process of turning wages into profits. Never forget, wages will give you survival, but profits can buy you freedom. And freedom, in the end, is what wealth is really about. One of the greatest discoveries I ever made about money was this. Real freedom comes when your income is no longer tied to your time. Most people work hard all day, come home tired, and think the only way to earn more is to work more hours. But that approach has a ceiling. There are only 24 hours in a day, and you can't work them all. The wealthy learn to build assets that work while they sleep. Assets don't get tired, they don't ask for vacations, and they don't call in sick. They just keep producing, if you've built them with care and discipline. I remember when I was younger, I thought working harder was the answer. But then I realized, you can't just work harder, you have to start working smarter. You have to put your money, your ideas, and your efforts into vehicles that multiply without your constant presence. That's what changed everything for me. It could be a business system that runs even when you're not there. It could be real estate that pays you rent month after month. It could be investments in the stock market that grow over years while you're focused on other things. The form doesn't matter as much as the principle. Build something that pays you whether you're working or not. The strategy is straightforward. Use your active income to build passive income. Instead of consuming all you earn, channel part of it into systems and assets. When you invest in businesses, in properties, in long-term funds, you're planting trees that will one day give shade and fruit without more labor. Over time, those assets can cover your bills, fund your lifestyle, and even outlive you. That's when money becomes a servant, not a master. Here's the practical step. Start today by setting up an automatic, recurring investment. Even if it's small, the act of automation makes it consistent, and consistency is what builds wealth over time. Each month, without you lifting a finger, that contribution works on your behalf. The goal isn't just to earn a living, it's to create a life where your assets do the heavy lifting, and your time is free for what truly matters. Most people make the mistake of thinking that wealth is about how much money shows up on payday. They measure their success by the size of the paycheck, but that's not the true scorecard. A high income can disappear as quickly as it arrives if it isn't converted into something lasting. Wealth isn't about what you make, it's about what you keep, what you multiply, and what you can count on when the paycheck stops. That's why you must learn to track your net worth, not just your wages. I remember when I first started earning a good income, it felt wonderful. More money than I ever thought possible for a farm boy like me. But at the end of the year, I looked around and realized I had nothing to show for it. I had spent it all on things, on experiences, on appearances. And while those may have given me temporary excitement, they left me empty-handed in terms of real wealth. It was a hard lesson. Income is temporary, but assets are permanent. If you want true freedom, you have to measure your life not by cash flow alone, but by the accumulation of assets that grow and protect you. The strategy is simple. At the end of every month, sit down and review your financial position. Add up what you own, your savings, investments, properties, and businesses. Subtract what you owe, your debts, loans, and obligations. The number that remains is your net worth. That number is the real picture of where you stand financially. Don't worry if it starts small or even negative. What matters is the trend. Each month, your goal is to see that number move in the right direction. Over time, as you add assets and reduce liabilities, you'll see progress that a paycheck alone could never reveal. So here's the practical step. Tonight, create a simple net worth spreadsheet. List your assets on one side, your debts on the other, and calculate the difference. Update it every month. That little habit of tracking will change your awareness, and awareness is the first step to wealth. Because in the end, it's not what you earn that builds freedom, it's what you own. When we talk about wealth, too many people reduce it to a number in the bank. But real wealth is more than money. It's the wisdom, the principles, and the disciplines you pass along. Because if all you leave behind is money, but no guidance on how to handle it, you may actually do more harm than good. Money without philosophy is soon lost. But when you leave behind not just the assets, but the mindset, you give your family and loved ones the tools to multiply what you've built and to live free themselves. I learned early that wealth without discipline is fragile. I made money young, but I also lost it because I hadn't yet mastered the right philosophy. That taught me that the real treasure isn't the dollars, it's the disciplines. If I can pass those along, then the next generation won't have to repeat my mistakes. Imagine leaving your children not only an inheritance, but also the habits of saving, the joy of giving, and the wisdom of investing. That's a legacy. The strategy is to be intentional about teaching. Don't just lecture, demonstrate. Let your family see you save before you spend. Let them watch you give a portion cheerfully. Let them see you make an investment instead of buying another toy you don't need. Habits are more easily caught than taught, and people learn more from your example than from your words. And here's a practical step. This very week, share one money principle with your children or loved ones. It doesn't have to be complicated. Maybe you explain why you save 10 cents from every dollar. Maybe you show them how you track your expenses. Maybe you talk about the importance of patience when investing. What matters is that you plant the seed. Over time, those small lessons will take root, and when they face their own financial decisions, your wisdom will guide them. Because at the end of the day, a bank account may fade, but a legacy of principles lives on for generations.